You are not family. That voice rang out in front of the full banquet table, surrounded by relatives, neighbors, and cousins. The voice came from my grandson, the same boy I once carried on my shoulders, the one I walked hand in hand to school. The room wasn't as quiet as I had thought. Forced laughter, clinking of knives and forks, averted eyes, all made me realize I had just been crossed off, right in the home I built. I didn't argue or explain. I sat silently, letting those heavy words echo inside me. People think betrayal is like a violent storm, but sometimes it's just a cold phrase enough to bury all the loving memories. But they forgot one thing. This house, this banquet table, every smile present, it all started with my hands. And before that night ends, they will have to recall that truth in a way they never expected. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The clinking of knives and forks continued at the banquet. The smell of grilled meat, wine, and sweet pastries mingled, but suddenly, everything felt strange to me. The words, "You are not family," from Ethan, my 16 or 17-year-old grandson, kept echoing in my mind. I looked around the long oak table I had built with my own hands over 30 years ago. Every grain of wood, every crack held memories where my son learned to cut his first piece of meat, where my wife placed birthday cakes for the kids, where my first grandchild learned to walk beneath the table. And now, right at that table, I was treated like a stranger. No one defended me, not a single objection. Even Matthew, my son, just forced a smile and kept slicing the meat as if he hadn't heard a thing. Elaine, my daughter-in-law, leaned back, whispering something before bursting into loud laughter, deliberately making sure everyone heard. That laughter wasn't joy, it was a declaration of victory. I realized I was not just insulted by a child, but by a well-planned scheme. I was being systematically erased from this family. I poured more water into my glass, my hand steady, but my heart feeling squeezed. I've faced fire before, endured long nights on duty as a firefighter, surrounded by black smoke and blazing walls, but no fire has ever burned me like today's, a silent flame that's destroying family ties. I used the excuse of needing to get some fresh air. No one stopped me. Not a single hand rested on my shoulder to ask if I was okay. They kept laughing, eating, and chatting as if my presence or absence meant nothing to them. The answer was brutally clear: they don't need me anymore. Stepping into the hallway, the dim light illuminated the framed photos hanging on the wall. I once chose and framed each photo, but now they no longer tell my story. It's all pictures of Matthew and Elaine at fancy parties, Ethan in his football uniform beaming with his trophy, Emily smiling brightly in the garden. And me, there's no trace left. I had been erased long ago. Today, Ethan just said it out loud. I stopped in front of the living room. From inside came Elaine's sharp voice. Everything is finally perfect now. We can finally be in control, throw proper parties. Then Matthew chimed in, "Yeah, that's right. Now we're truly a family." My heart ached. It turns out, in their eyes, I'm just an obstacle. I sat down on the old armchair by the window, the piece I bought with my first month's salary when this house was new. The leather is worn, but every crease holds memories of nights I held Matthew, reading him stories to sleep. He's grown now, with a wife and kids, his own voice, and all I have left is silence. In that silence, a small hand touched my shoulder. Emily, my 15-year-old niece, stood there, eyes glistening. "I'm sorry for what Ethan said, Joey. You're still family. You mean everything." Her words brought tears to my eyes. But I smiled and placed my hand on her shoulder. "It's not your fault." People can forget, but the truth remains. Emily nodded softly, wiped her tears, then quietly returned to the dining table, leaving me alone. with my thoughts. I sat until the banquet table was cleared and the laughter slowly faded away. In that house, I heard Ethan's words replay in my mind, not to torment myself, but to remember sometimes. Those we give everything to can choose to forget us, but I know well, memories aren't easily erased. When I passed by the oak table again, placing my calloused hand on its surface, I whispered, "You will remember." Not through arguments, but through truth. Not through anger, but through what cannot be denied. Elaine didn't ask if I needed anything. Matthew didn't even bother to wish me good night. Ethan was probably absorbed in his phone. Only Emily. She still glanced back at me before heading upstairs, her eyes warm like a candle in the dark. I climbed each stair, every step a sharp ache. But my heart slowly stopped tightening. I was no longer trembling. I understood they thought I was old, weak, and fading, but they forgot. I am the foundation. And when the time comes, they will have to remember that with both heart and mind. The next morning, I woke early, as I had for years. Dawn light filtered through the kitchen window, shining on the table where I used to drink coffee with my late wife. The aroma of drip coffee rose, bringing a brief moment of peace. But just minutes later, footsteps tapped on the floor. Then Elaine's voice rang out. "Sweet, but cold, you're up very early." I was about to say, "Maybe you should consider moving somewhere smaller. This house is too big. It's too much for you now." My daughter-in-law stood in the doorway, silk robe on, hair neatly done, as if she'd rehearsed this line. She didn't look me directly in the eye, her gaze fixed on the glass of orange juice she had just poured. "I can still manage," I replied calmly. Elaine smiled, a forced half-smile. "You can manage? Sure, but the family needs space to grow. This house could be used better, you know. A place more suitable for the younger generation. This house? I built it with every paycheck saved, every plank of wood, every brick. To me, it's a memory, a testament to my love for my wife, the cradle that raised our son. But to Elaine, it's just a space that needs renovation." I didn't argue. I took a sip of coffee, letting the silence speak for me. But in that silence, I realized Elaine wasn't speaking carelessly. She was planting the first seeds of exclusion. In the days that followed, it became even clearer. Elaine began to change the house to suit herself. The photo of my wife and me from our anniversary disappeared from the living room, replaced by a family photo they took at a gala. The armchair I bought when we first built the house was moved to the storage room, making way for a shiny sofa. Anything connected to me gradually vanished. In the evenings, when the family gathered, Elaine told the neighbors, "Finally, the house can host proper parties, no more mess like before." That sentence was masked with a smile, but I caught the meaning, no more old man getting in the way. Matthew, my son, sat beside, just nodding. He didn't object or defend me, just stayed silent. That silence hurt me more than any words. "Ethan, no need to say more." The boy now treats me like I'm invisible. He throws out sarcastic remarks. "This house looks like a museum. The furniture's so old. It's probably time for a change." His words weren't accidental. I knew he was repeating exactly what his mother taught him. But there was someone else. Emily. She quietly observed everything. Once, she found me in the backyard, her voice trembling. "Grandpa, why do they treat you like that? Why don't you say anything to protect him?" I stroked her hair, forcing a smile. Sometimes people forget their roots. But what's built with blood and sweat won't be easily erased. Emily hugged me, her small shoulders trembling. In that embrace, I knew at least one heart in this house still remembers who I am. But Elaine didn't stop. One morning, while I was watering the flowers, I overheard her on the phone, speaking quietly but clearly. "That's right. Next month, we can invite the appraiser. If we get a good price, then we'll just start over somewhere else. My heart twisted. So not only did they want to push me out of the house, they wanted to sell the life's work I built. That night, when everyone was asleep, I quietly went into my old study. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out a thick, dusty envelope. Inside was a copy of the property papers. The original was still kept in a safe place. I had carefully done this since I built the house, like a craftsman who knew a storm would come someday. I gently caressed the paper, feeling every bold legal line owner's name, Harold Whitmore. A quiet flame ignited deep inside me. Elaine could change the curtains, discard old chairs, hang new pictures. But there was one thing she couldn't erase: the paperwork. That night, I sat at the wooden desk, writing in my old notebook, "They think I'm weak. But I still have something they can't touch. When the time comes, I'll show them the foundation isn't so easy to shake." The walls, the bricks, every scratch stood with me, and I knew the real battle was only just beginning. Night fell, the house silent under the faint yellow porch light. I sat alone in the upstairs bedroom, eyes fixed on old photos faded with time. On the wooden shelf was still a framed photo of Matthew and me when he was little, sitting on my shoulders, father and son smiling brightly in the newly planted garden. I remember that day clearly. Matthew raised his hand high, shouting, "I'm the tallest now." "Dad," I laughed, thinking I would protect that simple happiness for life. Yet now, that boy sat next to his wife, silent in the face of his son's insults toward me. That silence felt colder than any accusation. I closed my eyes, memories pulling me back to the early years, the days when my wife, Margaret, was still alive. She stood in the kitchen, deftly kneading dough to make cakes. I did the tables, fixed the doors, did everything to turn that rough house into a home. Matthew ran around, his tiny feet covered in white flour from playing with his mom. Laughter echoed everywhere. The house was noisy then, but warm. After Margaret died, the house fell silent. I tried to fill the emptiness with work, awkward meals, and going to parent-teacher meetings for both Mom and Dad. I never thought I was perfect, but I kept my promise to my wife to raise Matthew well. I did everything so he would never feel lacking, yet when he grew up, he let his wife see me as a burden. That afternoon, I sat in the living room, eyes fixed on the family photo taken on Matthew's graduation day. I put my arm around him, smiling brightly, filled with pride. I believed all my sacrifices were worth it. But now, looking back, I wondered, did I trust too much? Did I let love blind me to the fact that my son was drifting away? Elaine walked in and saw me staring at the photo. She glanced over, smirking. "That's an old picture, sir. I think it's time to replace it with new ones that reflect the present." After saying that, she turned and left me with a heart that felt like it was cut again. The present? To Elaine. The present means erasing the past, rewriting a story where I no longer have a place. I sat down in the familiar armchair. The creaking wood under my old frame reminded me of nights when Matthew was little, burning with fever, clinging tightly to me. I sat up all night, aching back, just to keep him safe in my arms. Back then, I thought, as long as he's healthy, I can endure anything. Now, his silence is what hurts me the most. I walked down the hallway, my fingers tracing the pencil marks on the wall where I once marked Matthew's height each year. The lines are still there, faded by time, but to me, each mark is a vivid memory. Yet now, my son lets others decide, even sell off those memories. At night, I opened the drawer of the old desk and pulled out a worn notebook. The first pages were filled with Margaret's handwriting recipes, messages, and even her last instructions before she left. The following pages were mine, packed with expense records, plans, and things needed to care for Matthew. I read every line, my heart tightening with sorrow. Everything I do is for the family. But now my family has turned their backs on me. Laughter echoed from the living room downstairs. Elaine was on the phone with someone, her voice full of triumph. Finally, everything is going according to plan. He can't do anything. I closed the notebook and looked out the window, where the garden was dark, but still carried the scent of the roses Margaret once planted. The rose fragrance reminded me of my gentle wife, and in that moment, I thought I heard her whisper, "Don't let them erase you. Harold, don't let them take what belongs to us." My heart ached sharply, but at the same time, clarity surged within me. Memories and the present may be at odds, but it's that contrast that woke me up. I can't let them keep treating me like a shadow in the house I built with my own hands, I quietly muttered. They think I'm weak. But I am still here. I won't let Margaret down. And I won't let Emily, my only grandchild, who still stands by me, watch her grandfather be buried and forgotten. Old memories and the cold present overlapped relentlessly in my mind. But instead of pain, I felt a clear resolve. I have allowed the silence to last too long. Now is the time for silence to become a weapon. Not screams, not arguments, but something stronger, documents and the truth. The wind howled outside the garden, dry leaves rustling along the path to the house that had changed so much. I sat alone in the study, the pale desk lamp casting light on the page where I scribbled a few diary lines. People can erase photos, discard old chairs, but they cannot touch memories, and this memory, I will hold on to it to the end. I looked up and saw Emily standing at the doorway, her clear eyes hiding worries far older than her years. He came in, clutching his notebook tightly, whispering. The girl pulled up a chair beside me, her eyes scanning the dusty room but still holding my breath. She took a deep breath as if trying to remember everything. "I hate the way they treat you," Emily blurted out, her voice breaking. "Ethan said that in front of everyone, and no one stood up for you. I feel it's so unfair." I placed my hand on my granddaughter's shoulder, my old hand trembling slightly, but warm. "Don't hold on to anger, Emily. I've lived long enough to know that hatred is a heavy burden, sure. You don't have to carry it for me. What matters is you remember. Remember that I'm still family, still the foundation. But I'm scared they'll push you out of this house. I heard Mom talking. She said you should move somewhere else. This house doesn't forget who built it. And neither does the law." The girl looked at me, her eyes lighting up at those words. You have a plan, don't you?" she whispered, lowering her voice as if afraid someone might hear. I nodded softly. Yes, I've been prepared for a long time. They just don't know it yet. And you, Emily, don't need to worry. You just need to keep your heart pure. That's the most precious thing left in this family." "You mean everything to me." "They may forget, but I will never forget." Many long nights I wondered if the effort and love I gave to this family would vanish into nothingness. And now the answer comes from my own granddaughter. In her eyes, I still exist, still a pillar of support. The next morning, as the family gathered for breakfast, no one noticed Emily quietly pull up a chair next to me. She poured me a glass of milk, pushed a plate of bread toward me, a small gesture, but in that heavy atmosphere, it was like sunlight breaking through the clouds. Elaine glanced over with a displeased look, but said nothing. Matthew just kept his head down reading the newspaper. Ethan ignored us as usual. Only Emily and I knew there was an invisible thread quietly connecting us grandfather and granddaughter, one no one could cut. That afternoon, I took Emily out to the backyard, where my wife used to grow roses. We trimmed a few branches together, the scent gently drifting in the breeze. I showed her each plant, every scratch on the fence that I had built with my own hands. See, everything here bears the mark of your grandparents' hands. No matter how much they change, the roots remain. You will keep them for me. In my eyes, Emily was no longer just a child to protect, but also a witness to the truth that I had never disappeared. That night, as I sat down with my notebook, I wrote another line, "In darkness, there is always a light." Emily is my light. Because of her, I know I am not completely alone. And she will be the reason I keep moving forward, never retreat. But inside me, a fire had been lit. Not a fire of anger, but a light of faith. Faith that eventually, the truth will be restored to its rightful place. That night, when the whole house was asleep, I remained quietly seated at the oak desk in my study. Outside, the wind blew hard, branches tapping on the window like a rhythmic knock urging me. I knew deep down that if I stayed silent, I would soon be erased from this house. Elaine might use sweet words to hide her schemes. Matthew could stay silent. Ethan might be stubborn, but together they would script my removal. I opened the desk drawer, one that hadn't been touched in a long time. Inside was a thick layer of dust covering old papers, utility bills, expense ledgers from 20 years ago, a few letters from Margaret. At the bottom, I found a thick envelope sealed with worn yellow tape. My heart pounded as I pulled it out. Inside, each paper was neatly folded original property documents, purchase contracts, ownership certificates. I carefully spread them out on the table. Under the light, the bold black letters still echoed the sound of the past hammer owner, Harold Whitmore. I sat motionless for a long time. All these years, I remembered that I was the one who built this house. But looking at the documents, I felt the undeniable power of silence. Elaine could change the curtains, get rid of old chairs, even hang her own photos everywhere. But these papers stamped in red, are undeniable proof. I smiled softly, a gentle smile, not from joy, but from realizing I still had a weapon. People can twist words, but written documents don't lie. The next morning, while the family was busy preparing breakfast, I quietly folded the papers, placed them in a new envelope, and hid it in the wardrobe drawer in the room. Emily saw me do this, tilted her head, and asked softly, "What are you hiding?" "Sir," I put a finger to my lips, signaling her to be quiet. Then I pulled her into the room and opened the envelope for her to see. When Emily's eyes landed on the words, "Owner Harold Whitmore," her mouth dropped open. "So, this house, everything, still belongs to you." Her voice trembled, a mix of worry and relief. I nodded. "That's right. They may think they've gotten rid of me, but the papers don't lie. And when the time comes, I'll show the whole family the truth." Emily hugged me tightly and whispered, "I believe you." That trust was like a small flame, warming my heart. She reminded me this fight wasn't just for myself, but so she'd have a place to hold on to, so she wouldn't have to grow up in a house full of lies. That afternoon, when Elaine went out with Matthew, I quietly opened the envelope again and carefully read every clause. I remembered the day we signed the contract. Margaret standing beside me, her hand gently resting on my shoulder. "You did well," she whispered. "This house will always be a safe place for us." Her words echoed in my mind, a reminder that I couldn't give up. Elaine and Matthew might be dreaming of selling the house and splitting the assets, but they forgot this house is more than just property. It's proof of love, sacrifice, and a lifetime of hard work. Late that night, I wrote one more line in the old notebook documents found. This will be the final proof. They can erase my name from the photo, But they can't erase me from the law. The day they face the truth is drawing near. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. Not because I felt safe, but because I knew I had something strong enough to fight the betrayal of my own blood. Since finding that stack of papers, I feel like I have a pillar to stand on amid this house full of lies. I didn't tell anyone except Emily, i.e., she's the only emotional support left in this family. But I know I can't let her bear too much. What I need to do is make a clear plan, step by step, quietly. In the morning, while everyone's bustling in the kitchen, I keep my habit of sitting by the window with my coffee, pretending to be a tired old man quietly. But in my head, I'm calculating. Elaine is growing more confident. Matthew is busy making calls about house appraisal, and Ethan is just busy bragging to his friends that this house will soon be his. They treat me like a shadow, and that contempt is my advantage. One afternoon, I pretended to stroll around the garden, then quietly stepped out to the street. I stopped by Thomas's old lawyer office, an old friend who helped me complete the purchase of this house years ago. He's much older now, his hair white, but his eyes still sharp. When I laid the documents on the desk, Thomas looked at me for a long time. "Harold," he said in a low voice, "you've kept this intact for decades, and now I understand why. You were preparing for today." I don't want a fuss. I just want the truth to be recognized. If they want to sell the house, want to push me out, I will lay the papers on the table and let everyone see who the real owner is. Let the law speak for you. We discussed a few more steps, notarized backups, creating a new ownership certificate as a precaution. I left the office with a new thick envelope of documents, stamped bright red. On the way home, my steps suddenly felt lighter. Inside, Elaine and Matthew had no idea. They were busy arguing about buying a new dining set, and Ethan was absorbed in his phone. Only Emily glanced at me, seeing the envelope hidden in my coat. Her eyes lit up. I gave a slight nod, silently signaling everything's going as planned. That night, I kept writing in my notebook. The plan has started. No noise, no shouting. I'll let them walk right into their own trap. When they think they've erased my name from the family, I will appear with undeniable proof. The next day, I started organizing my personal belongings. I gathered old photos, diaries, some of Margaret's keepsakes, placing them in a wooden box. Emily helped me carry it up to the attic and put it in a locked drawer. She asked, "Are you doing this to keep Mom from finding out?" I nodded. Exactly. There are things they want to erase, but you have to hold on to them, because memories aren't just for remembering. They're evidence of a life lived and loved. Emily squeezed my hand and nodded without saying more. Days passed, and I kept playing the silent old man, but behind their backs, I prepared a new will clearly stating that the house and assets would belong to Emily when I'm gone. I sent the original to Thomas for safekeeping. I also opened a separate bank account, transferred my savings there, and changed the mailing address to a personal mailbox. Everything I did was quiet, without a sound. I knew that one day, Elaine and Matthew would make a more aggressive move, maybe a family meeting, maybe secretly selling the house behind my back. And then, I wouldn't need to argue. I'd just open the envelope with the documents, letting the signatures and seals speak for me. Late at night, I wrote in my diary, "The plan isn't to retaliate with shouting, but to wait for the right moment. My silence is not weakness. It's a dagger hidden in a sheath, and when they think I have nothing left, they'll see everything is still in my hands. The small lamp on the desk cast light on the pages, my shadow stretching along the wall. I knew I was entering a battle that didn't need swords, but memory, patience, and immortal papers, and I was ready. That night, Elaine set the table like a small party again. The yellow light reflected off the brand-new dishes she proudly said she bought with family money. Matthew sat beside her, his face tense but trying to hide it. Ethan still carried that cocky attitude, leaning back in his chair, eyes darting around as if everything in this house naturally belonged to him. I sat at the head of the table, silent, like a shadow in my own home. Only Emily quietly pulled her chair closer to me, placing her small hand on the table as if to say, "You're not alone." "This house needs a new plan. Dad, you're getting older. Managing the estate must be a heavy burden. Let Matthew and me handle it, and you'll be more at ease," Ethan interrupted with a sneer. "Your time is over. Now it's our time. This is when I need to speak up, not with arguments, but with the truth." I set down my glass, calm voice. "But one thing never changes, and that's the truth written on paper." "What papers?" "This house belongs to the whole family." The whole table fell silent. I opened the envelope and laid out each document on the shiny table. The red seal, the clear signature, undeniable. "Here," I said firmly, "is the certificate of ownership for this house. The legal sole owner, Harold Whitmore, not Matthew, not Elaine, not anyone else." Matthew jumped up, face pale. The confidence in her eyes vanished instantly. Ethan sat stunned, the spoon in his hand clattering onto his plate. I looked each of them in the eye. "You've forgotten that this house was built by whose hands, sweat, and tears? You think you can erase me from this family portrait with a few words, a few new pictures hung on the wall, but the documents don't lie. The truth never fades." Elaine tried to salvage, her voice sharp. "You can keep the documents, but you're old. Do you still have the strength to manage? They'll say, you're just clinging to the past." I calmly replied, "The past is the foundation of the present. And when the foundation crumbles, the house built on it can't stand. You all should remember I don't keep these documents to show off. I keep them to remind you that you're living on someone's hard work and faith." The room fell silent. Emily suddenly clapped softly, her eyes shining as if to tell me, "They had to listen to you." Matthew slumped into his chair, head bowed low. Ethan pressed his lips together, not daring to say another word. Elaine clenched the edge of the table, but her eyes wavered. I gathered the papers, put them into an envelope, and tucked it neatly into my jacket pocket. Then I spoke slowly but firmly, "I don't need to argue any further. The documents will be the answer. From now on, if anyone dares to treat me like an outsider, remember, this house never belonged to those who forget their roots." I stood up, resting my hand on the chair, leaving the room silent behind me. My footsteps echoed down the long hallway, each step affirming that I have never been erased from this family picture. That night, I wrote in my journal, "The fateful dinner." The truth has been revealed, but this is not the end. It's just the beginning of a longer battle. They will react, and I am ready. After that dinner, the atmosphere in the house changed completely. Elaine no longer pretended to be sweet. Her eyes were cold, constantly whispering schemes with Matthew. Ethan spoke much less, but occasionally muttered about Grandpa won't hold on for long. I stayed silent, but I understood clearly from now on, the fight wouldn't be limited to words. They would turn to the law to reverse the situation. And just as I expected, one Monday morning, I received an envelope from the district court. Inside was a petition from Matthew and Elaine requesting the court to review my capacity status. They wrote that I have memory decline, no longer capable of managing assets, and need a legal guardian to protect the family's interests. To put it bluntly, they want the court to declare me incompetent to seize decision-making power. I sat quietly for a long time, my thin hands gripping the petition tightly. Could betrayal by blood be any more bitter than this? But instead of trembling, I felt a strange calm rising within me. This is exactly when the silent preparation I've made all along pays off. That afternoon, I met with Thomas, the lawyer friend from years ago. After reading the petition, he frowned. Just as I thought. Harold, they want to take you down using legal tactics. But don't worry, this isn't hard. We have the property papers, the new will, and most importantly, you're still lucid. They won't win. But they've chosen this path. I have no choice but to respond with the truth. I answered every question clearly, named the current president, repeated my phone number, even recited a poem Margaret once loved. The doctor looked at me and smiled. Mr. Harold, you're more lucid than many young people. She took detailed notes and kept copies of the documents. Once, I saw her eyes redden as she whispered, I never thought my parents would take things this far. I'm ashamed for them. You just need to remember, the truth always has a voice. The small courtroom, cold light pouring down from a high window. Matthew and Elaine sat on one side, tense, but trying to look confident. Ethan wore a shirt, smirking, while Emily sat beside me, her eyes resolute. Their lawyer stood up, speaking non-stop. Mr. Harold is old and weak, with declining memory. The family only wants to protect him and preserve the shared assets. My old friend stood up, voice steady. Your Honor, my client is not only lucid, but has all the paperwork proving ownership, sir. We have the notarized will, the property documents, and medical examination results confirming that he is fully capable of managing the assets. The plaintiff's petition is essentially an attempt to seize property unlawfully. The courtroom fell completely silent. When it was my turn, I slowly stood up, leaning on my cane, speaking clearly. I may be slower than before, but every brick in that house was laid by my own hands. I still remember every day I worked to repay every penny of the loan. I have never forgotten my responsibilities, never abandoned this family. Yet my own son and daughter-in-law want to make me powerless. I asked the court to see. I am not just the owner of that house. I am the one who kept this family alive. Emily quietly shed tears, while Elaine turned her face away. After over an hour of debate, the judge struck the gavel. Mr. Harold Whitmore is fully capable of managing his assets. At the same time, considering that the plaintiff is abusing the law for personal gain, the court will consider penalties. Matthew hung his head, Elaine went pale, and Ethan suddenly stood up, growling but was held back by security. I turned to Emily, giving a slight nod. She whispered, "You won." I smiled and replied, "No, Emily, the truth is the real winner." That night, sitting with my journal, I wrote family turned into rivals, but justice stood by me. This isn't just the victory of an old man, it's a reminder that silence doesn't mean defeat. Documents, patience, and the truth, these are the strongest weapons. Elaine and Matthew rarely dared to look me in the eye. Ethan avoided me, sometimes muttering unpleasant remarks. But I no longer cared much about those shadows. Inside me, a decision was gradually forming, the final decision about the future of this house and who will protect it. That afternoon, I called Emily into the room. I placed a thick, carefully sealed envelope in front of her. "I want you to keep this," I said. Emily's eyes widened. "What is this?" "The future," I replied slowly. "Inside here is the will, notarized documents. When I'm gone, the entire house and assets will belong to you." She was stunned, her eyes shimmering. You trust me that much. "But what about Mom and Dad? What about Ethan?" I shook my head softly. "That's exactly why I chose you. Your parents have been blinded by greed. Ethan is arrogant and has never valued other people's efforts. Only you, Emily, are the one who still sees me in this house not as an old man, but as part of the family. Trust should be given to those who know how to keep it. Emily burst into tears, hugging me tightly. I promise, I won't let you down. I gently patted her back, my eyes misty. In that moment, I saw Margaret's figure flicker, smiling kindly. She would approve of this decision. The next day, I met Thomas at the law office. I asked him to finalize all procedures so the will couldn't be contested. Thomas nodded. You chose the right person, Harold. That girl has clear eyes enough to protect this legacy from decay. When I returned, Elaine blocked me right in the hallway. Her tone was icy. You think winning once in court is the end? You'll regret turning your back on your own family. I looked straight into her eyes calmly. Family isn't about exploiting documents to take from each other. Family is about those who value one another. You chose a different path, Elaine. I only chose to protect what remains. Matthew stood behind her, his face downcast. I saw a flicker of regret in his eyes, but it was quickly swallowed by silence. That evening, the family ate dinner in silence. Ethan still tried to throw me challenging looks, but I didn't bother responding. In my heart, the battle had reached its conclusion. That night, I wrote in my journal, I have placed my trust in Emily. This is the final decision of my life. They may hate me, they may seek revenge, but at least I know my legacy won't fall into the hands of a traitor. Tomorrow, when they realize everything, they will understand you can't erase a person through forgetfulness, because documents and memories will always remain. Outside, the wind rustled through the rose garden Margaret once planted. I gently closed my eyes, listened, and for the first time in months, my heart felt at ease. Not because of victory, but because I placed my trust in the right place. The day the lawyer's final notice arrived came sooner than I expected. All the paperwork was completed: the will, the notarized documents, the inheritance rights fully transferred to Emily. I knew it wouldn't be long before Elaine and Matthew found out. And when that happened, their ambition would flare up one last time before burning out. Just as predicted. One evening, when the whole family was gathered, I placed a thick file on the wooden table. My voice was low but clear. This is the truth. From today on, this house and all its assets will belong to Emily when I am no longer here. The decision has been legally recognized. The room fell silent. Elaine jumped up, eyes blazing. You can't do this! She's just a child. I'm the one who has taken care of you all these years. I looked her straight in the eye. Firmly, taking care or controlling. You can fool yourself, but you can't fool the documents and the truth. Matthew bowed his head, hands clenched, face stunned. Maybe he still had some conscience left, but it was too late. Ethan flushed red and shouted, You're so selfish. You've destroyed this family. I took a deep breath, then replied, No, Ethan, it's greed and disregard for roots that have destroyed this family. To me, I'm simply stating the truth. I am not the surplus. I am the foundation. Emily sat beside me, eyes red but shining with pride. She held my hand tightly, as if to give me strength. Elaine burst into tears, but they weren't tears of regret, just tears over lost entitlement. She shouted, slamming her hand on the table, You'll regret this. One day, Emily will turn her back on you too. I shook my head calmly, maybe, but at least I entrusted my faith to someone who has proven worthy. As for you, you lost your chance a long time ago. Then, they left the table one by one. Elaine dragged Matthew away, her steps heavy. Ethan slammed the door and walked out. The house fell silent, leaving only Emily and me. She looked at me, trembling, and asked, Sir, so, it's really over. I smiled softly, No, Emily, this isn't the end, but a beginning for you to live in a family that respects the truth, no matter how painful it is. That night, I sat alone by the old wooden table. Over the years, it had witnessed family dinners, fights, insults, and the moment the truth was revealed, I placed my hand on the table, whispering, It's all over now. This house will go on, but no longer shrouded in lies. The next day, Elaine and Matthew packed their things without a word of goodbye. Ethan didn't even look back. The neighbors whispered about the scene, but I felt no bitterness. I only felt relief. Emily hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for believing me." I stroked her hair and smiled. In that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. The old family might have broken apart, but from its ashes, a new family built on truth and trust would be rebuilt. After all the turmoil, the house was no longer filled with the noise of arguments. Elaine's heavy footsteps, Matthew's avoidant gaze, and Ethan's arrogant tone were now just memories. They left in a hurry, leaving behind a foundation they once wanted to erase but couldn't. I sat in the living room, the morning light streaming through the window, illuminating the worn wooden table, the place that once heard the declaration, "You are not family." Now, that table witnessed the opposite that truth and justice had spoken. Emily came in carrying 2 cups of hot tea. She placed 1 cup in front of me, smiling gently, a pure smile that reminded me of Margaret long ago. I saw in her eyes not only gratitude but also responsibility. She understood that, from this moment on, the future of this house was no longer just my story, but hers as well. "Grandpa," Emily softly asked, "will I be able to keep everything later on?" I looked at her for a long time and replied, "You don't need to keep everything, dear. Just hold on to what matters most, the truth, faith, and the memories of family love. A house is just wood and bricks, but family, real family, is what you build from your heart." She nodded, tears welling up. "Chud." I knew she understood. In the days that followed, the house returned to peaceful life. Emily and I cleaned up the garden Margaret used to tend, pulling weeds one by one, replanting the faded rose bushes. Whenever the flowers bloomed, their gentle scent felt like a message the past may be full of wounds, but the future always has room for renewal. Neighbors started stopping by, bringing congratulations and support. They had witnessed me being forgotten, pushed out of the very house I built, and now they saw justice return not with shouting, but with silent, firm documents. One evening, I sat at the table, writing the final lines in the old notebook. Family once turned their backs, but I did not disappear. They tried to erase me with silence, but I answered with papers, patience, and faith. And in the end, what I leave behind is not just a house, but a lesson greed can blind. But truth always finds a way to speak. I closed the notebook and put it in the drawer. No more evidence was needed. I had lived, fought, avenged, and protected my dignity. That night, I sat with Emily on the porch, watching the moonlight silver the garden. She whispered, "Grandpa, I think the sweetest revenge isn't making them suffer, but proving they were wrong." I smiled. "You're right. Silence, when on the side of truth, is the strongest voice." No more fights were needed. No more accusations. Everything was clear. They could continue living with their bitterness. But I walked on in peace. And Emily, my loyal granddaughter, would carry on with the firm belief that she belongs to a family that truly values each other. And that is my story. The story of a grandfather who was seen as a stranger by his own family but reclaimed his place through silence, patience, and truth. If this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories, where betrayal, justice, and resilience always touch the hearts of listeners. Join us again in upcoming episodes to witness more journeys where the truth is finally revealed. Thank you for listening, and remember, silence is not always weakness. Sometimes, it's the power waiting for the right moment to be heard.